Welcome to Paths to Wellness with Shifra Enright and Fergal McLaughlin.
Hello, and you're very welcome to Paths to Wellness. We're now on session 5 of our 6-week programme, and you're very welcome. As I said, it's good to be involved and linking in with you again. So today our agenda is up here on the wall. So we will be starting with our feedback, as we do for each of the sessions. So we'll be looking at our action plans, and hopefully you will have brought to mind what your action plan was for the last week. We'll go through that. We'll be looking at activity 2, which is making healthy food choices, so that will be important, particularly I think because of this whole COVID issue in terms of how people are buying and what they're buying, so that'll be helpful. Activity 3, we're going to be looking at medication use and some issues that you might want to consider, and some helpful hints in relation to medication use. Then we're going to take a break where we're suggesting you stop, pause, get up and move around, and maybe have a nice cup of tea for yourself. And then we're going to move on to activity 4, which is called making informed treatment decisions. And this is where you may have to consider something and how we could help you with making those treatment decisions. Activity 5 is looking at the impact of low mood and depressive symptoms, particularly when you're trying to manage a chronic condition. And activity 6 is a response to that in many respects. It's how we can use positive thinking. We're not doing Pollyanna here, but there are ways in which we can use positive thinking to help us when we're having a difficult time. And then activity 7 will be making an action plan, and then at the end we will be doing a closing summary for today's session and introducing you to our final session, which will be session 6. So first of all, feedback. So my action plan for last week was to, on 4 mornings a week when I was driving to work, to decide very clearly and deliberately to turn off the radio and to engage in one of the activities we looked at last week, which was this nice, slow, pursed lip breathing. So my action plan was to do that for 4 days a week, to spend about 10 minutes on my drive to work each day using pursed lips breathing. And I achieved that, and it was just nice. It was just actually more than nice. It was lovely to arrive at work a little bit calmer. Fergal, how did you get on?
Hi Shifra. Yes, well, my action plan from last week was to eat a breakfast, and I was trying to have a healthy breakfast as well. So it was to eat a breakfast 5 mornings, Monday to Friday, with a banana as my healthy option. So I managed to accomplish it for 4 mornings, but I have a little boy at home, and on Wednesday morning, let's just say he didn't quite cooperate with the morning routine, and it got me behind time, got me delayed. I kind of didn't get the option of having the breakfast that morning, but as I was going out the door, I did bring my banana with me, so I did have it later on that morning. I didn't have it when I wanted it, but I had it later on, so I had to kind of slightly amend my plan there, because that's what happened.
But good self-care. You still got your piece of fruit in.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
All right, great. So well done on that.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to our second topic of today, and we're going to be looking at making healthy food choices.
Thanks, Shifra. So yes, we're just going to have a look now at making healthy food choices. We're going to look at the guidelines around healthy eating. And remember that you may not be able to eat perfectly all of the time, but I suppose most of us can take some small steps as we choose what to eat. And the basic guidelines that we're going to have a look at is on chart 20 here, beside it here, healthy eating guidelines. So the first guideline that we look at is number 1, work toward 5 portions of fruit and or vegetables a day. And 5 a day, remember, is the recommended minimum amount of fruit and vegetables. And why do we pick on fruit and vegetables? Well, they're a good source of fibre and vitamins and minerals. They help to avoid constipation. They have no cholesterol and are a healthy source of a carbohydrate. Depending on how they're actually prepared, they have little or no fat. So I suppose if 5 portions seem a lot, then work at gradually adding a portion or two each day. And that can often be a really good action plan to try to do that. Build it up slowly, build it in there. So the next point, the next guideline that we have is to choose foods that are lower in fat. So choose the leaner cuts of meat and eat more fish. Eat combinations of plant proteins like rice with beans. Use unsaturated fat. An unsaturated fat are liquid at room temperature and would be something like olive oil. Avoid saturated fats that are solid at room temperature, and that would be something more like butter. As you read labels, it is best to eat foods with no more than 5 grams of fat per portion. So no more than 5 grams of fat per portion. So number 3 then, our third guideline is limit foods that can raise cholesterol. So this is very important for maintaining good blood pressure and for preventing heart attack and stroke. 2 things determine our cholesterol: hereditary and diet. Now we can't really change hereditary, but we can change what we eat. So eat less meat and dairy products, as cholesterol is found in animal products. Avoid or limit saturated and trans fats because they cause our bodies to make cholesterol. Trans fats are solid at room temperature but do not come from animals. The fourth guideline here is if you have diabetes or are pre-diabetic, where some but not all of the symptoms are present, watch out for your carbohydrates. The recommended amount of carbohydrates for most people with diabetes is 45 to 60 grams per meal. Most of the time, choose carbohydrates that come from healthier sources, such as breads, grains, pastas, vegetables and fruits, rather than sweets, pastries, cakes, sugars, jams, which also tend to be higher in fat. Our fifth guideline then is to reduce the amount of salt or sodium in our diet, because these can increase blood pressure and heart disease. Sodium is often hidden, so be sure to read the labels. Reduce the amount of salt added to food, or do not add at all. And our sixth guideline there is to maintain a healthy weight, and we'll have a little look at that in our next session a little bit more. So maybe at this moment it'd be a good chance at home that if you have any of your food labels, like we mentioned at the end of the last session, if you have any food labels at home there, this would be a good chance to kind of get the food label and have a look at it. Just have it there beside yourself. So maybe just think about a couple of questions that I have here as well. So if you remember when I just spoke there, can you remember at home, what's the ideal number of daily fruits of fruit and vegetables, the daily portions of fruit and vegetables? So again, we're looking for 5 would be the least there. And can you think at home, true or false, are the best fats those that are solid at room temperature? And the answer there, yeah, you're right, false. These are the fats that cause your body to make cholesterol. And our last kind of question here is, if you people with pre-diabetes or are diabetic should have no more than how many grams of carbohydrates per meal? And our answer there, it's 45 to 60 grams. Okay, great. So if you have your food label there, have a look at it. And it's very important to know how much fat, salt or sodium, you'll see in brackets, but maybe sometimes beside it, cholesterol and carbohydrates we are eating. Now in packaged foods, this is sometimes very difficult to see. And that's why we have food labels. So look at the label that you have there at home with yourself. Have a look at it. Have a look at the front of it, have a look at the back of it, the food label that's on the back, but also the traffic lights that are on the front of it. Okay, the traffic lights are going to look a little like this. The red, if it's high in whatever it is, orange is for a medium amount, and green is for the low amount. So we're looking for obviously oranges and greens if we can most of the time. And Shifa,
Yeah.
you've got a couple of labels that we've had from other groups that people left with us. So So we're just going to have a little look at those now.
I'm just going to show you on screen
Right.
first so you can have a look at it.
So that one there. So Shifra, could you tell me the name of that food?
So this is a lovely indulgent macaroni cheese.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the portion size of that?
Portion size for this is, it's for one. It's
It's
a
for
portion, and it's, how many grams is it? It is 400 grams.
400 grams
Mhm.
for one person. Okay. And if I could ask you, how much fat is there in that?
So in terms of fat, if you're looking at the saturates, it is actually 98, is it 98 or 96?
Right.
With split hairs, we'll give it
Yes.
96%, which is pretty
Wow, that's
enormous.
high. Yeah, it is. It is. Okay. And could you tell me on that how much salt?
There is 38% salt in this.
38%.
Yeah, which is 2.3 grams of salt, which is really high
Wow.
again.
So that's the amount, 38% of your daily intake of salt is just in that.
In this. And the calories on it
Yeah.
are, they're high, but they're not the biggest part of it. The calories are 680, which represents 34% of your daily calories.
Okay.
But it's those saturated fats
Yeah.
and the salt that are
That's really, really high.
that are
That's
tricky
really, really high.
in that.
Lovely. Okay. And maybe we could have a look at another label
Yeah.
there as well. So again, we'll just have a look at that at home.
first.
That's the label we're going to have a look at.
So this is a turkey and ham dinner from Tesco's,
Okay.
their classic kitchen, and we'll just discuss it here. So this again is one portion. It's a portion for one person.
Okay. And could you tell me how much fat is in that portion?
Yes. So in terms of saturates again, which are the ones we were looking at
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
the saturates for this one portion are 33%. So 33% of this meal is made up of saturates,
Right.
which is 6.5 grams.
Okay. Okay. And could you tell me maybe the amount of sugar?
Yeah, the sugar is actually not so bad.
Okay.
It's 7.5 grams of sugar, which represents 8%
Okay.
of the total for this serving. And then the salt here again is kind of high.
Yes.
It's 2.6 grams or 43%
Wow.
of your daily allowance in
Okay.
terms of salt.
That's high again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Right.
Great. So you can see there can be a lot of interesting information on your food label, and it's well worth having a look when you're out shopping. Those sort of traffic lights on the front of it are a great innovation now on a lot of products. You'll see it on a lot of them. So you're at home looking for the greens and oranges, I guess, what we're mostly making up. Okay. So there's a lot more information about label reading and portion size and healthy eating in your course book. And as Shifa shows you there, what page is that?
Page 193
193
and 194.
and 194. Goes through the labels very nicely there with a lot more information. This is what we've spoken about here, and you can look it up yourself. Chapter 11 at home in your course book is very good all around healthy eating and its guidelines, so it's well worth having a look at that as well. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll hand you back now to Shifra, who's going to take you through our third activity today, medication usage. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're now going to look at topic 3 for today, which is medication use. So medication can be a very important part of managing a long-term health condition, and while medications will not cure the condition, they can help to keep the condition under control and often will make your life more comfortable. So medications generally have one or more of the following purposes. So if we look here, so if we just look at chart number 21 here, we're looking at the purposes of medication, and as we can see, the first purpose in relation to using medication is to relieve symptoms. So that might be where we're using inhalers, or we might be using pain medication to manage our condition. The second purpose for using medications is to potentially prevent further problems. So we might be using blood thinners to prevent stroke, and we might be using diuretics to manage water retention. A third reason why we would use medication is to improve the condition or to slow its progress. So this might be the case in terms of some heart medications and also medication for conditions like osteoporosis. And then the final one on this chart in terms of the purpose for medication would be to replace substances the body normally produces. So here we might be thinking about something that, such as insulin or thyroxine. So these would be things that would be used to replace something that the body is no longer producing. So with medications, unfortunately, while they can be very helpful, they also have some downsides. And some of the problems with medications include effects that we actually don't want. So we're going to look here at the medication side effects, which is our chart number 22 here. And we'll just work our way down through this. You'll be familiar with a lot of these. So no noticeable effect. So when you think of when you think the medication is not working because the symptoms don't change, this may be due to the medication is working but the symptoms don't change. So the medication can work but your symptoms may not change. So for example, when treating high blood pressure, there are usually no symptoms, so you may not feel anything while the medication is actually working. Then the next one that we have here is medication is working but you feel the same. So the medication may be holding your symptoms in check, and you may not be getting better, nor are you getting worse, or you are getting worse at a slower pace than might otherwise be. The next one we're looking at here is medication hasn't started to work yet, and some medications actually can take a number of days and in some cases a number of weeks to build up to a dosage level where you're actually really getting the benefit of taking that medication. And then the last issue to discuss here on this part is medication just isn't working. So if that is clearly the point, the really clear guidance is that you don't stop taking a drug because it has no effect until after you have reconsulted with your consultant or with your GP in relation to that. And then if we look at negative effects, so allergy and side effects can be a common issue for some medications. So let's talk about each of those. So clearly allergies are dangerous and can be dangerous. So usually they're easy to spot. So you may develop a skin rash or hives or swelling or wheezing or difficulty breathing. So when or if those were to occur, you should stop taking the medication immediately and call your doctor. If you have trouble breathing, you should be phoning 999 straight away. And then in terms of the negative effects as well, we're looking at side effects. So these can be annoying and unwanted, but are often not dangerous. So they make the most common kinds of side effects like this would include nausea, constipation, diarrhea, dizziness, and in some instances also sleepiness. So some side effects like frequent urination when taking diuretics to lower blood pressure actually mean that the medication is working. Often side effects can be avoided or managed just a little bit better by taking the drug exactly as prescribed, such as with food perhaps, or with a full glass of liquid, or at bedtime. So that can be something that you can work on maybe in consultation with your GP. So don't stop taking a drug because of side effects until after talking to your doctor about it. They will be able to let you know what to expect from the medication and when, and they may also have ways to lessen the side effects or can find a different medication perhaps if that's indicated. So to reduce the risks of taking medications, especially if you are taking multiple medications, it's important to develop a partnership with your healthcare professionals. So that's where you're both working in tandem to make sure that each of you knows exactly what's happening and that you have a clear understanding about the role of the medication. So let's look at our third chart here, which is chart 23, which is called medication responsibilities. So it's very clear what we're talking about here. So first of all, inform all of your healthcare professionals about all of your medications and the dosages that you're taking. So this includes dentists too. So remember, you are likely to be the only one who knows everything that you're taking. So be sure to also tell your doctor about over-the-counter drugs that you might take, or nutritional supplements that you might take, or herbs, or eye drops, or medicinal creams, or lotions, or suppositories. So make sure that you tell whomever you're dealing with about all of the medications and the preparations that you're taking. To help with that, number 2 here, is something that people on the course decide sometimes to do as an action plan, and that is to make and to carry a medication list. So be sure to keep this list updated, because they can go out of date, and review it periodically with your healthcare professional and your pharmacist to make sure that your pharmacist is absolutely up to date as well. The third point that we have here is to know why you are taking each medication and how to take it. So this means understanding what each medication is for and what it's supposed to do for you, and the directions about taking it. Also, if there is more than one choice available, ask which one is best for you, considering the potential side effects, the cost, and the impact potentially on your own daily routine. So all of those things are issues that you can work with your healthcare professional about. Number 4 on our medication responsibilities chart is report effects of each medication, or if you are not taking it as prescribed. So here I suppose the guidance is that to be honest and tell your doctor if you're not taking the medication that's been prescribed exactly as it is supposed to be taken. And then that opens up a conversation. We talked about communication last week about what may be some of the barriers to taking that medication. So when you leave the doctor's surgery, he or she is expecting you to follow through on what the two of you have agreed on. If you don't take the medication as prescribed, your doctor will not have the information necessary to take care of your health condition. Also, if cost is an issue, make sure that you actually let your GP know about that. And point number 5 in terms of medication responsibilities that we have here is use medication as prescribed. So this means don't cut pills in half unless instructed to do so, and don't share medications with others or take medications which are not prescribed for you, because you can potentially have interactions between these drugs. And the final point here in terms of medication responsibilities is to use your mind. So as we keep saying, our mind is very powerful and is a tool that we've listed in terms of our toolbox. So using positive thinking and imagery which engages our mind can really help your medications as well. So use positive thinking and imagery to imagine your medications are working well. So almost to imagine them working through your body, and that can potentially for some people be quite a satisfying experience to engage in. So we'll be talking more about next week about working with healthcare professionals. So this may be the kind of idea that you might need to have a conversation with your medical professionals about, and we'll link this to that issue that we'll be addressing in our next week's class. So we're now just going to move on to doing a free think. So Fergal's going to move in our board. Thanks, Fergal. So you're familiar now with what free thinks are, and effectively they are an opportunity for everybody who's participating in the group to list some ideas that they have about a question that we're going to pose. So you cannot get the benefits of medication if you do not take them. Sometimes this can be hard, and we understand that. So the free think that we're going to do asks a particular question that's relevant to that. So our free think for the moment today is, what are some of the problems that might prevent someone from taking medications as prescribed? So we're just going to pause there for a few seconds to allow you to get that pen and paper that hopefully you have beside you, to maybe jot down 1 or 2 ideas that you have that are personal to you about this. So what are some of the problems that might prevent someone from taking medications as prescribed? So what would your experience of that be? Okay, so what we're going to do is have a look at some of the ones that people who have done this course previously have told us about, and see if this matches with your experience. Okay, so in answer to our free think, people who've done this course previously have said that some of the problems that would prevent them from taking their medication as prescribed included the fact that they were experiencing a lot of tiredness, so they might have forgotten to take the medication as it was prescribed. They might have not taken the medication as prescribed because of some of the side effects that they're experiencing because of that, and they're just not tolerating them well. They may not take the medication as prescribed because there's just too many different kinds of medication to remember to take. They might forget to order the medication from their local pharmacist, or maybe just that impact of feeling a little bit low and just not feeling like working with your healthcare professional or working with the medications that were prescribed might be impacting on your ability to take them as they have been prescribed for you. So I'm wondering if you added any other ideas to that. These might be some of the ones you listed, but your reasons are absolutely valid and important to acknowledge as well. So you might have listed some of these as being reasons that would prevent you from taking medication as prescribed. And I'm just wondering if maybe anybody has found that kind of tiredness or forgetting to take medication is a particular issue that has come up, and it has done on other courses that we've run. So we might just do a quick problem solve in relation to that, and we're familiar what problem solving is around throwing out ideas that actually might help us to resolve something. So what are some ways to help remember to take medication? I don't know what your ideas are, but perhaps there's a couple that we could suggest. I know that one lady who is very fond of drinking tea on one of the courses we ran said that she always puts her medication right beside the tea caddy so that she sees it every time she goes to make herself a cup of tea. That's a good one. Another one might be that you have a conversation with your pharmacist and they put together a blister pack for you which segments the times of the day that you're to take that medication. That can be helpful, and again put it in a prominent position so you see it. And then there's another aid which some people on some of the courses chose to use as well, and it's something that's sponsored by one of the pharmacy companies, Novartis, and it's called don'tforget.ie, so DONTFORGET.ie, and you can literally give your first name, your date of birth, and the time that you want to be reminded for, and they send you a text to your phone. So you might want to explore that. That's a personal choice for yourself if you did want to take that one up. And there is a sequence as well for you to unsubscribe to that if you prefer to do that. And then the other one, just in a more general way that you might find interesting to use as a resource, is medicines.ie, medicines.ie. That is a website that is produced by all of the pharmacists in Ireland that lists every prescribed medication that is licensed for use here. So it's a very reliable source of information. And that, in a more general way, not specifically around remembering, would give you information about the medication that you may be taking. So hopefully there's some ideas there that you might want to incorporate in terms of managing if sometimes taking medication as prescribed has been a difficulty for you. Okay. So the next thing we're going to look at is, so for additional information about specific medications, we encourage you to read the patient information leaflet given with each medication and to talk to your doctor as well, or to your pharmacist about that. So for next week, we suggest that you complete a personal medication list that includes, firstly, the name of all of your medications, the doctor who prescribed that medication for you, the dosage of that medication that you're taking, the date you started it, and the reason that you're taking that medication, and then also list any allergies to any medications that you may have. So the list should also include all over-the-counter medications, as we said earlier, including herbs and vitamins, creams, ointments, eye drops and suppositories. There are some cards available from some charities and healthcare providers that can allow you to list your medications on them. Especially be sure to carry the list with you whenever you visit any healthcare professional, and remember to keep it updated as well. So basically, to conclude this section, we're looking at self-management toolbox, and obviously looking after and managing your medications is important in terms of your overall management of your condition. Okay, thanks. Great, so what we're going to do now is to encourage you to get up and to move around, stretch your legs and your arms a little bit, maybe some fresh air or some slow pursed lip breathing, or make a cup of coffee and take a break. It's good to be involved in some self-care, and we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks, Shifra. So we'll move on. Hope you had a nice break there at home. And we're now going to move on to activity 4, which is making informed treatment decisions. So I suppose we hear about new treatments and new medications, alternative treatments, nutritional supplements. We hear about this all the time. Since we know that long-term conditions seldom have a cure, it's easy to hope that these things will help us. And we all want that kind of magic bullet or miracle cure, which is understandable. But therefore, it's very important that we're able to evaluate what we hear so that we can make an informed decision about whether to try them or not. And this is very important for any treatment, even something that a doctor recommends, as well as complementary or alternative treatments. If you are considering trying something new, there are some important questions that you should ask yourself in the process of making this decision. And these questions can help inform you. You can also do the decision-making exercise that we learned in session 3 before. Remember, the decision-making was, what was the decision we wanted to make, what was the question, and we had pros and cons on either side. We gave a weighting to the answers on either side, added them up, did the maths, which side came out on top, and then maybe we asked that gut question as well. Did my gut agree with this decision or not? So that was that. So you can use that in this part here, but also what we'd also like to look at is this chart here, chart 24, and to evaluate treatments. So the first question you would ask yourself is, where did I learn about this? Was it on the internet? Was it through a scientific journal, a newspaper article? Maybe it was an ad on the telly? Maybe a neighbour told you about something, or even maybe somebody got a flyer in through the door or something like that. Were the people who got better like me? So in other words, were they the same age, same gender, had the same lifestyle, had the same health problem? Number 3 here, could anything else have caused these positive changes? So could it have been like a seasonal change, an other medication that we don't know about, were there emotional changes in that person's life, or change in stress level? Fourth question you might ask when you're trying to evaluate the treatment is, does treatment suggest stopping other medications or treatments? So does it require that I stop taking medication because of dangerous interactions? So that would be a very careful question to look at. Number 5, does the treatment suggest not eating certain foods? So in other words, does it try to eliminate any important nutrients or stress only a few nutrients that could be harmful to me? Can I think of any possible dangers or harm? And I suppose sometimes you can be misled. Sometimes you might see something like a natural product, but natural isn't necessarily better just because it comes from a plant or an animal. For example, hemlock is natural, but a deadly poison. These products are not usually regulated, and the dosages are not well controlled. So in some cases, prescribed medications come from natural plants, such as the heart medication digitalis, which comes from the foxglove plant. It is natural, but it's regulated, so the dosage is exact and safe. So what information does your doctor or pharmacist have about this new treatment that you're considering? Number 7, can I afford it? So by afford it, I suppose financially can we afford it, or physically, emotionally, also a cost there. And the 8th question you might ask yourself, am I willing to go to trouble and expense? Or do I have the necessary support in place? So if you are thinking about changing your treatment or your medication or something like that, do ask these questions about it first. And if you are going to use the internet, which a lot of us are, especially in today's climate, we rely more and more on the internet. If you're going to use it as a source of information about medications or other treatments, I suppose we strike just a slight note of caution. Not everything found on the internet is correct or even safe. Even if you do not have access to a computer at home, remember sometimes when the lockdowns finish off, we might be able to get out to the library again where there's computers there with some internet access. So people have access on their phones now as well, or that. Therefore, to help you find more reliable sources, look at the author or sponsor of the site and the URL address. So the URL stands for the Uniform Resource Locator, and is the address of a specific website or file on the internet. And we're just going to have a look at some examples here that we've written up on the board. Okay. So, as you can see, we have some addresses here on the site here, and addresses that end in something like www.choiceandmedication.org here, Ireland. We have another one here, the URL here is at the end here, .org. www.medicines.ie. .ie is for Ireland, or it originates from an Irish website. www.citizensadvice.ie, again from Ireland. This one here is also from an organisation that's based in Ireland. That's what that means along there. You might also see some other addresses that would end in .edu. So that would be like for an education centre, somewhere like a university or something like that. .org, as we have up here, is another good one to have a look at. And .gov is another one. So that would be maybe some governments, or the NHS in England, for example, could use that. These sort of sites are the .ie one here, Citizens Advice. These are generally more objective and reliable. They often originate from universities or non-profit organisations and governmental agencies. Some .com sites, like this one, could also be good, but because they come from a commercial or for-profit organisation, their information might be biased slightly, as they may be trying to promote or sell their own products. Now, throughout your own course book, you will find a lot of recommended sites at the end of each chapter. They're all reliable sites with good information on them, so we would recommend you could have a look at those. If you ask yourself all of these questions and decide to try a new treatment, remember it is very important to inform your doctor about it and keep him or her informed on your progress during the time you're taking the treatment. Okay, so thank you. I'll hand you back over to Shifa now. Thank you.
The topic today is dealing with depression, which is activity 5 that we looked at from the agenda earlier. So as we look at the symptom cycle, one of the points that can affect our condition is depression. Unhappy feelings or depression are just one other symptom, like pain and fatigue, and I'll explain that a little bit in a moment. So these feelings are part of the normal ups and downs of life, but they may contribute towards worsening of other symptoms. So if we have a look here at chart number 7, we can see here that depression is a symptom. But for Paths to Wellness, it's a symptom just like shortness of breath is, or physical limitations, or pain, or stress. And it's a symptom that we can work on, we can do something about. So we're talking about depression here that doesn't, let me clarify that. We're talking about depression here which is more around a day or 2 days, feeling a little bit low, feeling down. We're not talking about depression that lasts for a number of weeks or a number of months. So we are discussing the unhappy feelings that usually come and go. These we can help when we're involved in self-management. More severe or longer term depression may need professional help and medication. And there are some really good treatments for that, but that's not what we're talking about here. So before we can do something about these feelings of low mood or depression, we must be able to recognise when we're depressed. So for some people this is not so easy, so let's just discuss how you can tell if a person is depressed or if you yourself are depressed. So let's do another free think. So the question that we're going to look at next is, how do we know if we are depressed? So we're just going to move in the chart. Thanks, Virgo. So hopefully you have your pen and paper beside you, and we're just going to ask you to maybe jot down one or two responses for yourself or for somebody you know in terms of how do we know if we are depressed. Okay, so hopefully you've had time to jot down one or two ideas about that. And again, using the contributions of people who've attended the programme with us in the past, we've just drawn up some of the responses that they had to this question. So how do we know if we are depressed? We might be more quiet than we had typically been in terms of conversation. Our body posture might actually give some sense, so it might just be kind of more closed in, or just a lower or a kind of a not very alert body posture. That can often suggest somebody's feeling somewhat depressed. We might actually at a physical level be feeling much more tired and more fatigued. That is a very real physical symptom of low mood and depression. We might find that we are withdrawing more from others, and I suppose in the context of COVID-19 that might even be withdrawing from people who we are living with and just withdrawing to ourselves a little bit more. Another kind of bodily symptom is that we might find sleeping patterns are changing. They've altered in some way. Either it's harder to get to sleep or waking more frequently during the night and not being able to turn over again and go to sleep. And again, another kind of bodily symptom, and it's really interesting how many of these are actually related to the body and what's physically going on in the body. People can sometimes find that they have a change in their appetite, and that could be both ways. It could either be an increase in your appetite or actually a reduction in terms of your appetite. So maybe you have some of these ideas in terms of how do we know if we are depressed. Just one or two other ones to add to that. Sometimes people might find that they have some more accidents. They're more accident prone if they're feeling low or feeling depressed. And they may also find that they are more tearful, or just for no reason becoming upset and tearful when they hadn't expected to be tearful. So hopefully that will give you some indication as to how to recognise, very importantly, whether you're feeling low or feeling depressed. So just moving on from that, we're now going to, clearly, because as we've said, this is a symptom, and as a symptom within self-management, there are things that we can do to break into this cycle to help the symptoms. So the next free think that we're going to look at are, I'll just turn over our page. So, being constructive, good self-carers. If we are feeling low or depressed, we want to be able to address that. So what are some things we can do to make ourselves feel better when we're depressed, or when we're blue or sad or grouchy? So this is where maybe you take your pen and paper again and maybe just jot down one or two things that you've done in the past, but maybe other things that you think you might be interested in trying to address. What you can do if you're feeling depressed or blue or sad or grouchy. I'm going to give you a minute on that. Okay, I don't think that's quite a full minute, but hopefully you've had a chance to maybe jot down something. So again, using what people who've attended the course previously, what they've told us that they have found in terms of what are some things that can help when you're feeling depressed or blue or sad or grouchy. One of the suggestions was to call somebody, and we know that during COVID-19, That's something certainly that people are doing a lot more of. They're talking to people on the phone. They're looking for some support from other friends or colleagues or whatever. Another thing that says here is get out of the house every day. So we know from next Monday, the 18th, that we can all move around a little bit more in our communities. But getting outside of your room, your house, and getting some fresh air and seeing the lovely spring greenness that's there can actually really help to lift your mood. It might be that you decide to give yourself a treat. That can be something that's just, you know what, I just need something a little bit nice just for me, where you can give yourself a treat. Or it might be that you actually just take a pen and paper and write down how you're feeling, and actually in some way almost decanting it from your brain onto the page, just writing down, this is how I feel. Sometimes that helps to kind of just clarify what's going on, and people do find it helpful. Another thing that can be added to this list is that you might decide to do something for somebody else. So small acts of kindness, it can be a good thing to do and can make you feel a little bit better yourself. What we didn't put down here actually, and it's one that often comes up, is maybe taking some alcohol or drugs to make yourself feel a little bit better. And while they can have some effect, often with alcohol there's a kind of a stimulant effect, and then typically people may experience some kind of a low drop off afterwards. So alcohol just needs to be managed carefully if it's one of the things that you are using, if you're feeling sad or blue. So just watch out for that. It's important to be aware that not all depression can be handled through self-management. So sometimes depression is severe enough to require you to speak with your GP about seeking more professional help, and we would encourage you, if that is the situation for you, to do that, to have a good conversation with your GP. If you feel unhappy for more than a few days and it's kind of lingering into a week or two, or particularly if you felt in any way that you weren't safe or were considering to harm yourself, it's so important that you would actually speak with your GP or somebody you trust so that you can get help in a very immediate sense. You need to get help if that's happening for you. So severe or clinical depression is a biological illness, and often what's happening for us can actually impact on that and go beyond that biological base and make things very hard. But the treatments that are available for depression like this are really improving and have some really good outcomes. So again, really important to encourage you to engage with your GP to have a discussion about that if that is happening for you. So also, if you're taking medications for depression and are thinking about stopping those, please do speak with your doctor first, because there are some studies that would suggest that that is quite a risky strategy to take. So it really should be discussed with your GP before you would consider changing medication. So one very effective technique for dealing with depression and for breaking the symptom cycle that we've discussed before and we're going to look at again next is the use of positive thinking. Okay, so this is a follow-on piece to the piece that we just looked at in terms of people who may be feeling low or blue or grouchy, and it's where we make a kind of a deliberate attempt as self-managers to look at the use of positive thinking. So this is our sixth activity for today. So all of us, whether we realise it or not, have habitual things that we say to ourselves. So it can be this kind of internal voice that's going on. And sometimes we may even say thoughts out loud. So we might actually find ourselves speaking in a harsh way or harsh tone to ourselves. We also know that our mind can have a powerful effect on the way we feel. Therefore, when our thoughts are overly negative, they can lead us to feel and act in a negative way, particularly feeling negative. We develop a negative attitude or outlook that can create low self-esteem, that can create depression, and actually lead to a level of inactivity which we know may impact on our overall well-being. We may feel we want to give up, all of which makes our symptoms and all of our health symptoms worse and harder to manage. So for example, if first thing we think about every morning when we wake up is how hard it is to get out of bed. The negative thoughts can actually make everything seem like an uphill battle, strewn with obstacles. So if that happens, that when you're getting out of bed, the thinking pattern around that is how hard this is, that will really impact in terms of how you're engaging with the day that's ahead of you. So learning to change this negative thinking to more positive thinking is an important tool, and by that we mean it's a tool that actually needs to be practiced, but it can help in terms of our overall management of our condition. It's one of the tools that we can use. So here are some examples of the same message presented in a negative and then in a more positive way. So just listen into this and just see what you're detecting from this. So I'll start. Thanks, Virgil. So I would like to exercise, but I just can't. Just thinking about it makes me tired, and I can feel already I'm short of breath. Besides, I know that if I did any exercise, my arthritis is going to act up. There is no reason to try it because of that, so I know I just can't do it.
Well, starting an exercise program will give me an opportunity to get outdoors again. And maybe I could start slowly and easy, maybe with a drive to the garden centre first, and then just walk around the garden. If I get too tired, I could sit down and enjoy the flowers while I rest.
Okay, so that's two people's response to a situation around maybe trying to get more exercise. So just let's listen into this next scenario and see again if you can look at the impact of negative thinking and positive thinking. The future frightens me. My life will not be the same again.
Well, life is an adventure. Maybe something wonderful is around the corner for me.
So as self-managers, learning to replace or change our negative thoughts and attitudes for more positive ones can help us to better manage our health and our lives in general. And I think neither Fergal or I would want to underestimate the challenge of being somebody who has a significant chronic health condition through this experience of COVID-19, and we do not want in any way to diminish that, but we do want to introduce you to this tool, which we think can actually help, particularly when your thinking is quite negative. So what we're going to do is maybe just look at one or two examples using our flip chart, and maybe you might even want to just jot down a response to some of these negative thoughts. So Fergal's going to bring in the chart. And we've just put 3 up here. Excuse me. So the first negative thought is, I'm too tired. And you could fill that in with, I'm too tired to whatever is relevant for you. So it might be that you say, I'm too tired to prepare that healthy meal that I thought I would like to prepare yesterday evening when I saw that cookery program. And that would mean perhaps that you actually didn't go ahead to do it. But maybe if we were to look at turning that to a more positive interpretation, so we might come up with something that, I am tired, but I'll get the ingredients out, put them on the kitchen table, and spend 5 minutes getting everything ready. And then I'll judge whether I actually want to go ahead and cook that meal for myself. So that might be a kind of a challenge to that first one of, I'm too tired. The next one that we've put up there is, I'll never be able to do that task. So maybe take a moment to think about what you would fill in there in response to that start of that question. So if we were trying to do some very specific positive thinking in relation to this, we might challenge it a little bit and go something like, I've learned how to do problem solving with Paths to Wellness. I'm going to try and look at problem solve how I would be able to do this particular task that I want. And that's where you'd come up with a list of solutions and try one out and then review it. And then the third one is, I'll never be able to do I'll never be able to do the things I did before. And clearly, if you're trying to manage a long-term health condition, this can be something that can really trigger a lot of negative thoughts. But it might help if you were to respond in a slightly different and more positive way. So it might be that you'd be saying something like, I have to change the way I do things. If I want to do something that I did before, I'm going to need to adapt and come up with some constructive solutions to get to do what I want. And the impact of that statement in terms of encouraging you to try something is going to be very different from the potential impact of this statement, which is, I'll never be able to do the things I did before. So here what we're doing is we're trying to suggest the power of the tool of using positive thinking. So we're now just going to take a look at the chart in relation to this. Thanks, Robert. That's great. And again, we do appreciate that this is a very challenging time, and maybe because of it, it's even more important that we would look to try and engage in positive thinking. So we have chart 25 here, and it's looking at steps towards positive thinking. So the first would be to write down the self-defeating thought, just as we did there on the flip chart. To write down that thought, write it down clearly. It might be that it's showing that your thinking is very biased or very negative. And then the next step would be to change that self-defeating thought that you've written down to rational and helpful thoughts about yourself. So you're challenging it and writing down something rational and helpful thoughts about yourself. The third point there would be to rehearse. So you're mentally saying, say these things to yourself is so familiar. So mentally say these things to yourself is so familiar. Then practice in real situations. And then to be patient. It takes time for new patterns of thinking to become more automatic. So just to go through that, so the first is to identify the self-defeating thoughts. That's usually the easiest part. There can be a lot of them. The second is to kind of challenge them and change to something more rational, kind of getting into that really pragmatic part of your brain, where you can come up with some helpful suggestions and solutions, and maybe thoughts about yourself that are in a more helpful frame. Then rehearse some of those comments, hear them being spoken internally in your own head, and then maybe practice putting them into practice. So whatever that challenge that you have created, maybe using a problem solve, you would put that into practice. And then finally, that one about the compassionate piece around being patient, that this is something that you may need to do and revisit again and again to make sure that you're able to firstly become aware of that negative thinking and then be able to challenge it, just as we did in those two scenarios at the very start where Fergal and I explained to you about the impact of negative thinking and then how you can actually challenge it. Okay, so sometimes, especially at the beginning, it is difficult to change these negative thoughts into positive ones. So if this happens, it's helpful to have some ready-made positive statements, sometimes called affirmations, on hand to use, especially for those times where we may be down. So for example, have someone have something good to say about yourself, or the situation like, I am an able person, I'm feeling better about myself every day. Life is an adventure. There is always something new around the corner. So these are kinds of affirmations that you can either say to yourself, or I have a friend who, when she opens the cupboard of her press, she just has a little one written on a sticky inside the press. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes she reads that and she feels a bit better. So changing the way we think is like changing any habit. At first, we must be deliberate, and you must pay close attention to the skill you're trying to develop. With patience and practice, both positive thinking and a more positive outlook on life will become more automatic. Not absolutely automatic, but more automatic. Like learning to dance or like learning to drive a car. You have to put the effort in at the start to actually make some progress. So let's take a minute to reflect on something positive about ourselves. So I suppose here, I'd really like if you could take a moment or two just to think about something about yourself that you know inherently is something really positive about you, and maybe using an internal quiet voice, or even if you feel like it's saying it out loud, say something positive and truthful that you know about yourself right now. So if you need a little bit of help, again, some of the people who've done this program with us before, I'm going to share with you what they have said. So one said, I'm a competent person, so I know how to do things. Another said, I'm a kind person. Another said, I'm a hard worker. And another said, I try to help others. So they are positive, clear affirmations or statements that we can make about something we know to be inherently true about us as individuals. So I suppose what we would like you to do is to become a little bit alert and watch out for when you are engaging in negative thinking, and almost like a little flycatcher, you try and catch those thoughts right at that moment when they're fleeting through your head, and just go, oh, hold on a second, that's not fully true. That's not fully true. There are some other statements that I have that I can make about myself that I know to be true. If after rehearsing and practicing for a number of weeks, positive thinking still doesn't seem to be working for you, don't worry. Rather, maybe it's time for you to go back to using one of the other tools in the toolbox that you've learned and that we keep encouraging you to use on the course, or going back to the book that you have, your reference book, to help you manage the symptom that you're currently experiencing. And maybe come back to it, positive thinking, at another point when you're ready to engage with it. And requires, obviously, as we said, again, more practice at that time. So if you're feeling really down and this technique just doesn't seem to be helping, again, as we said at the start of this, do speak with your doctor, have a clear conversation with them about low mood or depression. You may be depressed and you may need to consider taking some medication. Using your mind is one of our tools from our toolbox, and that's where the positive thinking fits. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Shifa, for that. So we'll move on to our last activity now today, which is again around making our action plans. Remember, the action plan does allow us to achieve what we want or decide to do by breaking down the activity into a smaller, more doable step or task. My action plan for this week will be to build along the healthy eating pattern, and what I'm going to do is bring one of my food shopping cards, like this. I'm going to bring it with me when I go on my weekly shop. So what I'm going to do is bring my food shopping card with me on my weekly shop, and I'm particularly interested in what I buy and what the salt content is in it. So I am going to look and see what percentage of my intake on that food that I'm buying is salt in it. So that's what I'm going to do. When I'm going to do it, well, I will be going shopping probably on Saturday. So I'll do it once, it'll be a weekly shop, I'll have a look at it, and I'll be interested in finding out what I find there, and my confidence of doing that is an 8. Yeah, 8. So maybe
Good luck
Shifa,
with that, yeah.
thanks very much.
Right.
If you'd like to
Yeah.
tell us what your action plan is.
So my action plan this week, I think I'm going to go back to this piece about the affirmations.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just trying to think out of my head how I'm going to work it out. So what am I going to do? I'm going to write down some positive affirmations. Hard to say that. I think I'm going to try 3 positive. No, I'm not going to try. I'm going to write 3 positive affirmations. How much? I'm going to do that for 15 minutes. Tomorrow is Friday. I'm going to do it Friday, and I'm going to do it on Monday. So Friday and Monday for 15 minutes each. That's when, for 15 minutes, Friday and Monday. And I'm going to do it twice. And I'm then going to write those 3 on little stickies. I'm going to put 1 in my work diary, and I'm going to put the other 2 in my house, 1 in the kitchen and 1 in my bedroom. And my confidence in doing that is an 8.
An 8.
I'm actually looking forward to doing that one.
Great. Well, the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great. Super. So there are action plans. Hopefully you'll set your action plan at home with those parts to it there. Or if you find any difficulties with it, remember our problem solving steps that we can always bring in to try and help us as well with it. Okay. So it's just in our closing now today. So next session will be our last session. We would also like you to do a couple of things for that before you see our last session. First thing we'd like you to do is to keep a food diary for 1 day in the weekday and 1 at the weekend day, just as you did that a couple of sessions ago. But this time I want you to pay careful attention to your portion sizes. And the second thing we'd like you to do is to maybe write a letter to either your GP or to ourselves here in the primary care centre about how you have felt over the course of this. Now obviously we had 2 sessions which were in our group format, and now we've gone on to a more online version. So maybe you could let us know how that's been for you as well. Think about what maybe you have accomplished or achieved over the time you started Past Wellness to now. If you are going to write a letter to us, you can write to us here at the Primary Care Psychology Service, the Primary Care Centre, Harbour Road, Mullingar. Remember, it's nice if you write down some things like that. If you don't want to post it, that's okay, that's absolutely fine. But if you did decide to post it, we would really welcome that, and it would be a great chance for us to get some feedback from yourselves. We'd also invite you to read over the reading material from today and in your course book, what we've covered. And next week, next session is our last one, so we look forward to welcoming you back then. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.